through 15. After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool, called in Hebrew Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been cured, "It is a Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat." But he answered them, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Take up your mat and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take it up and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared in the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. One of the interesting things to me is the question that Jesus poses here to this man. He has been ill. He has been paralyzed for 38 years. And Jesus asks him this question: do you want to be made well? You see, it's interesting when we come to healing that it's hard for us to fathom that someone would not want to be well, or this fathom of well, why would the guy say, "No, I don't want to be made well"? But the interesting thing about it is, I believe there are certain things that we have just become, it's just the way my life is going to be. Have you ever heard that statement? It is what it is. But the reality of that matter is that there is healing that is offered. There is the opportunity to experience the healing power of God. In a fatalistic mindset, we just kind of go, it is what it is. Nothing's going to change. It's the way my life is going to be. These are the cards that I've been dealt, whatever the case may be. But Jesus' offering here is, do you want to be made well? Because, see, for 38 years, this man has had other people who have had to be in service to him. They've had to come along and help him. I envision his friends helping him to get from place to place, much like the friends who lowered the paralytic down in front of Jesus through the roof in Mark, or in Acts chapter 3, the friends who would bring the paralytic to the gate called Beautiful. Do you want to be made well? This man has really been able throughout all of his life, what is normal to him is to have others who are taking care of him. His life will change if he is healed. His life will be different now because suddenly he will take responsibility for himself. This may mean that he'll work. This may mean there's a variety of things that are going to come as a part of this responsibility of healing. Now, if you notice here, the man never answers, except for to say, he doesn't say yes or no, but he says, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." He's stuck in what he knows. He can't see beyond this idea that the man who's standing in front of him could offer him something that, yes, they believe can happen in that pool, but this man can do it without the use of that pool. He's not understanding the fullness of what this man who is standing in front of him, who we know to be Jesus, is saying. Do you want to be made well? Well, I don't know how you're going to be able to do that, because every time the water stirs and I head towards it, and so Jesus, man, are you going to help me get into the pool? And so the man doesn't say, by faith, Jesus, I want you to heal me, or by faith, I want you to do something for me. He says, I don't know how you're going to do it, buddy. And what does Jesus do? He speaks these simple words: stand up, take up your mat, and walk. Stand up, take up your mat, and walk. Look at the progression of this healing. You see, this man has been in the laying position. He's been there, and that's his normal place. I can almost see him kind of resting on his elbow, laying on his side. And Jesus says, get up. Now, have you ever fallen and needed somebody to help you get up? I can see in this man's eyes, you want me to get up. Now, man, I don't know who you are, but you understand, I can't get up. But there's something compelling about Jesus's way of speaking to this man, that he begins to make that movement from the horizontal position to the vertical position. And as he's standing up, I can see him, he's feeling the strength returning into the bottoms of his feet and up his ankles and up into his knees and on up into his hips and up into his body. And he's seeing the world in a whole new light. Now, let me tell you, that would have been a miracle right there, that the man could stand up. Now, I do find it interesting that then Jesus says, now take up your mat. Now, what is this mat? Well, this mat is the very manifestation and the representation of his illness. This is the mat that they would lay out so that he would not have sores on his body from being present in that horizontal position so often. And so this is that reality. This is part of the marker of his need for healing. Jesus says, stand up. Take up your mat. And Jesus says, now walk. I wonder what's going through this man's mind. I was just in the horizontal position. This man has spoken a word into my life and told me to stand up, and I've stood up. And he's told me to pick up my mat, and I picked up my mat, that very representation of my illness. But now he's telling me to walk. I love watching children who are learning how to walk. You know, they kind of get their feet set, and they kind of stand up, and all of a sudden when they stand up, they see the world in a different light, and they'll just kind of plop back down out of fear of what's going on here. And then he begins the process of walking. And as he's taking each and every one of those steps, he is experiencing the healing power of Jesus Christ in his life. Now, Jesus, we don't see here, touches the man. We don't see here that he applies a mud pack on him. We just hear Jesus saying the word. Now, let me say to you why that part is so important in my mind. One of the things that I love about the healing service, whether it be as part of the ashram or in other events that I've had the opportunity to do, is that ability to live out James chapter 5, where it calls for us to anoint with oil and to lay our hands upon someone and pray for their healing. Through this format, through this platform, we don't have that ability. We don't have that ability to touch one another, and oh, how we miss that. We miss that touch. We miss that incarnation. We miss that ability. But here we are reminded that Jesus simply speaks the word. His power goes out and healing comes. Well, this man is very pleased with his new condition, and he's walking through the community with his mat underneath his arm, and he's walking along, and, well, what day of the week is it? It's a Sabbath. He's not supposed to be carrying his mat on the Sabbath. This is work. And so the people who are overseeing that law, they come along and they say, hey, you're not supposed to be carrying your mat. And his answer is wonderful. The man who healed me told me to do it. But who is that man? Now in verse 13 it says, now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared in the crowd that was there. But Jesus finds this man again. He comes back to him. And he says, see, you have been made well. Do not sin anymore so that nothing worse happens to you. Now what's this reference to something worse happening? Well, some might say, well, it's because of his sin that he was in the condition he was in. So if he doesn't change his ways, he's going to be paralyzed again. But we read in John chapter 9 that the man who was born blind, it says that neither he nor his parents sinned that he was in that condition. So I'm not sure that that's the key here. I think this goes to a deeper place of our need for healing that goes beyond just our physical person to the wholeness of who we are as spiritual beings, as emotional beings, as mental beings, as relational beings. We need the healing touch of Jesus in more than just our physical ailments, but we need a healing that goes to our relational struggles, that goes to the emotional darkness and pain and hurt and anxiety and fear that we suffer. We need that healing of our mental condition, and we need healing of our spirits. Look at the times that Jesus, in healing someone, told them that their sins have been forgiven. Here he tells us, man, do not go and sin any longer. We are whole beings. And so when we come to a healing service, it's easy for us to get caught up in the need for our physical healing. It's easy for us to get tied up in our bursitis and our back pain and all of this. But brothers and sisters, there is pain that we hide from one another. An inner heart pain. A mind that is struggling. A spirit that is struggling. And so tonight, this afternoon, we join together in recognition that healing is all about Jesus. It's not about me. It's not about you. But it's about the work of God through the power of the Holy Spirit to touch our hearts, our minds, our lives, our mental and emotional life, our physical life, our relational life, our spiritual life. The question we have to answer, though, is, do we want to be made well? Do you want to be made well? I believe that God heals in a variety of ways. And I've been influenced greatly by E. Stanley Jones and his list of things that he says in Abundant Living of how God heals our body, our minds, our souls. One is by medicine. I give God thanks for the medical community. God uses them, and I give God thanks for that. God heals by surgery. One thing that you do not know about me is About 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with what is called a cholesteatoma. It's an ear growth. It's in the inner ear, and it attacks the bones of the inner ear, and if left unchecked, will begin to break down the bones of the skull, which can cause even worse conditions. So as I sat with the surgeon, he said to me, Matt, it isn't if you get this surgery, but it's when are we doing this surgery? This is not optional. You need this. This over time could save your life. And I give God thanks for a surgeon who could go in there and he could clean all of that out and he could begin the process of rebuilding my inner ear. And God has healed me through that. Now, I still wrestle with that ear. I have to wear a hearing aid now because I don't hear well out of it. But God is using all that to heal me. God heals by scientific nutrition. Let me put it bluntly. Sometimes we eat ourselves into our own health crises. And so God heals us through that scientific nutrition. God heals us by change of climate, by mental suggestion. He delivers us, he heals us through the deliverance from underlying fears, resentment, self-centeredness, and guilt. Now, not wanting to sound judgmental, but there's a whole lot of our world right now that is overwhelmed with resentment and self-centeredness and fear. And we need the healing touch of God. God also heals by the direct action of the Spirit of God upon our bodies, by miraculous ways of healing that not even the doctors and the nurses can explain. And then finally, God heals through the resurrection. That for those who are in Christ, are followers of Christ, we know that when this life ends here on earth, there is the promise of resurrection, where there is no more tears, there is no more pain, there is no more cancer. God heals. The question that we have to answer tonight with this man is, do you want to be healed? Do you want to experience the healing touch of Jesus? What we're going to be invited to do, and this is a thing where I have dreamed up how I believe this should work. I believe the technology should work in this way. But in a moment, we are going to end this session of the gathered group. You will then receive an email from me. And in that email, there will be 3 Zoom links. Those links represent a different prayer team that will be praying for your needs. If you've noticed when you've come into this meeting, Brother Ed has had to admit you into the meeting. You've been put into a waiting room, and then he has admitted you. Each of those Zoom rooms that we have established have waiting rooms. And so what the prayer team will do is to admit one person out of the waiting room, and you'll have the opportunity to share your need with them. And then they will pray with you. This is our hope, if this works the way that we have it envisioned, to give you the closest thing we can to a prayer station if we were together in person. Our hope is to also give you the ability to share your need or with someone, and for them to immediately pray for the need that you have lifted up. If you don't have a need, but you know someone who is in need of our prayers, you can bring that person's name and share their need with that prayer team as well. Our desire as the design team met together, as Brother Ed and I met together, was how can we recreate the prayer room, the prayer stations, the healing stations, when we're scattered all over North America. And this is our attempt. And so you will receive that email as soon as we leave from here. You're invited to click on one of the 3 links. You don't have to click on all of them. I will be in one of the rooms. Brother Ed and Sister Janice will be in another room. Brother Tom will be in another room. And so you can click on one of the 3 links. And it's our desire to be able to pray with you and to pray for you.